Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvina Vaditamastu Mavidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May the Divine Being look over us lovingly as a mother and father. May the Divine Being support and nourish us as a mother and father. May we have the strength and skill to study together the art of spirituality. May no misunderstandings arise amongst us. Om, peace, peace, peace be unto us and to all beloved beings everywhere. So, a wonderful good morning to all of you. Namaste. We're studying Swami Prabhavananda's talk on the path of knowledge from his book, Realizing God, a collection of his talks. And we'll start here. We're talking about, he's going through in Raja Yoga, the process of diving deep within is contemplation, concentration, and meditation. In Jnana Yoga or Advaita Vedanta, the process in Sanskrit is Shravana Manana Nididhyasana. Hearing, contemplating or reflecting, and then a different kind of meditation involving insistence on truth. So we're in the portion of this talk that discusses manana, this process of reflection. And so the Swami says, what are we to reflect on? What is the self? What is it that is one with Brahman? In order to reflect upon this, you must have Shraddha, faith. Faith in the words of the Guru and in the words of the scriptures. Try to understand exactly what the Guru says. Try to understand what the scriptures say. That is reflection. Try to understand intellectually the simple truth. God is here within. If you have the faith that he is within, you will attain knowledge. So just a few more words about this business of manana. What it means to understand intellectually is to compare and contrast how you currently think, speak, and act with what is said by the Guru and the scriptures about how to more auspiciously think, speak, and act. That's what's meant by this kind of reflection. That's what's meant by understanding it intellectually. Most people think, well, I'll just think about it. I'll just think about what was said, and then I'll go on to the next step. No, it's an active process. We learn by the doing of comparing and contrasting how we currently are with what is said to be more auspicious for attaining the knowledge of the divine. So before we go on to the nididhyasana, or how to meditate, are there any questions about either the shravana that we discussed last week or this manana that we just summarized just now? Anything at all from anyone? Good. Okay. So then the Swami goes on, and finally, how to meditate. In the Gita, we find the light of a lamp does not flicker in a windless place. That is the simile which describes the yogi of one-pointed mind who meditates upon the Atman, or Brahman. When, through the practice of yoga, the mind ceases its restless movement and becomes still, the yogi realizes the Atman. I'm going to read that again. When, through the practice of yoga, and it doesn't matter what path you're on, they're all a form of yoga, that is both union and detachment. When, through the practice of yoga, the mind ceases its restless movement and becomes still, the yogi realizes the Atman. It satisfies the yogi entirely. Then the yogi knows that infinite happiness, which can be realized by the purified heart, but is beyond the grasp of the senses. This is from the Gita. So let me just read it again, because this is what Krishna says. In the Gita we find, the light of a lamp does not flicker in a windless place. That is the simile which describes the yogi of one-pointed mind, who meditates upon the Atman. When, through the practice of yoga, the mind ceases its restless movement and becomes still, the yogi realizes the Atman. It satisfies the yogi entirely. Then the yogi knows that infinite happiness, which can be realized by the purified heart, but is beyond the grasp of the senses. In the Chandogya Upanishad, we learn that in the infinite alone is happiness. And in the Upanishads, we also find that when there is purification of food, there is purification of the heart. And when that comes, you have a constant recollectedness of Brahman. Your thought becomes like oil poured from one vessel to another without any break. When you come to that stage of unfoldment, you have wisdom. You have the illumined knowledge of God. Now, again, purification of food is whatever you sense or perceive. This is one of the things that Sri Ramakrishna notes repeatedly in the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. In this age, we are so dependent on food. This is one of the reasons it's so hard to practice certain of these yogas. And as the Swami is pointing out here, by food, it's meant anything that is a stimulant to the senses. So he says, now again, purification of food is whatever you sense or perceive. Food is not merely what you eat in your mouths. Sometimes we can eat with our sense of smell. Whatever we gather through the senses must be pure. In other words, our eyes must see what is pure, our ears must hear what is pure. And of course, there are certain spiritual disciplines, discrimination between what is eternal and that which is not eternal. That is the first step in order to come to the understanding that God alone is the treasure. Then gradually your mind will not run after the pleasures and objects of the finite world. And then you acquire the six treasures. And then you acquire six treasures of life, such as poise in the midst of the opposites of life, self-control, control of passions, forbearance, contentment within. In other words, you have to establish the interest in God. And of course, that is what the Swami says. If you do establish the deep and sincere interest in God, yearning for God, that all of these other treasures that he just mentions arise spontaneously. And of course, that's what Krishna promises in the Gita also. Not once, but several times. So before we go on, is there anything that anyone would like to ask or comment about the processes of Shravana, hearing or reading the truths, Manana, reflection or contemplation on the truths, and then Nididhyasana, meditation on the truths, which is a form of insistence that that is true, not what I have ordinarily experienced. And this is the way we purify all of what the Swami refers to as our food, those things that come through the senses, is by insisting that they are indeed Brahman and Brahman alone. He or she who sees Brahman in every action attains to Brahman, says the Gita. So anything from anyone.
Yes, Brother Shankara, did you say that because of our dependency on food in this age, that practicing any of the yogas is difficult? I don't know
No. Sri Ramakrishna says that in particular, Raja Yoga and Jnana Yoga are difficult in this age. This is why he recommends strongly and repeatedly the practice of bhakti. And that, of course, is always going to be intermingled with the practices of karma yoga. Of course, it's difficult for any human being to move from the posture of not practicing any yoga to the practice of any yoga. That is difficult. This is why we pray to the divine for their refuge and for their sustaining and nourishing us as a mother and father. If they do that, then we are able to go forward. But it is particularly difficult, according to Sri Ramakrishna, in this age because of our dependence on the senses and the stimulation of the senses. It's a quality of the Kali Yuga. It's not an indictment of us. It's a characteristic of the Kali Yuga that that's what this action and experience suit is more predisposed to in this time. Thanks for the question, Aaron. That's right on point. Anyone else?
Shankara, it does take many years to get that stillness and concentration. And even though we fall back and then go back and forth, and it just takes a couple of years even to start that stillness, really.
You're absolutely right, Haim. You're absolutely right. And you know, if you read the Crest Jewel of Discrimination, which is Adi Shankaracharya's book on the practice of Advaita Vedanta or Jnana Yoga, you find that even after the attainment of Nirvikalpa Samadhi, if you remain embodied, there is distraction.
Yes.
And so that the yogi must be constantly vigilant, not to be swayed away by some aspect of Mahamaya. It's not called Mahamaya for nothing. Maha means great.
Great.
Means immeasurably great.
That's true.
Maya.
I agree. It takes many years to get that stillness, but if we continue to at least to sit down morning and night, even nighttime, that discipline will come, discipline of time to dedicate to that stillness will come slowly. Yes. And then we may go back and forth, you know, chatters will keep coming and going, and that's just, it is tough. It is tough.
Sri Ramakrishna gave us some guidance. Yes. About how much time we need to spend, whether it's morning and evening or at other times of the day, noon, 3 p.m., 3 a.m., they are also auspicious. But he said, I have done the full 16 annas. That is, in that time, 16 annas, and probably still, 16 annas equals 1 rupee. He said, you have to do only 1/16 or 1 anna. What is 1/16 of 24 hours? It's an hour and a half. So if we're to make the most of our day, we will somehow spend 90 minutes a day, only 90 minutes.
Yeah.
Just think, only 90 minutes a day in some form of spiritual practice. Within the Advaita tradition, that would be Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasana of the various kinds. And of course, after we've gotten the point, many people go on with the Shravana, reading this book and that book and the other book that is saying exactly or very close to the same thing in different words or somewhat different words. And they will more usefully calm their mind by spending more of their time in manana and nididhyasana, particularly in the beginning in the manana portion, comparing and contrasting how you actually think, act, and speak with what it is that the guru and the scriptures say. Doesn't matter if it's an embodied guru or not. You know, there are great teachers from all of the traditions. If you listen to their words, as Jesus Christ said, he who drinks from my mouth shall not taste death.
Thank you, Brother Shankara.
Thank you, Haima. Anything else before we go
on? Brother Shankara?
Yes, Sonny.
So you mentioned about the age of Kali Yuga and the age of untruth. And so I was wondering, like, and you also mentioned insisting upon the truth through meditation.
Mm-hmm.
So is there a more collective way to insist upon the truth, to do it more in a more tangible and physical way, to bring truth upon the earth?
Well, Sonny, we bring it on the earth by being illumined, by becoming illumined ourselves. As Ramana Maharshi said, the greatest gift that you can give the world is to know who you truly are. And so that has if you want to know what I'm speaking about, read Swami Vivekananda's talk, The Powers of the Mind. What a radiance is emitted by someone who is sincerely on this path, and even that is even magnified when they achieve the results. And this is why, when you go to some place like Vivekananda House in South Pasadena, California, or Ridgely Manor, now called Vivekananda Retreat Ridgely, in mid-state New York, and you spend time where Swami Vivekananda spent a good deal of his time, 6 weeks at the place in South Pasadena, a total of 14 weeks during his visits to the West at the Ridgely Manor. You can feel the presence of Swami Vivekananda. If you go to Dakshineshwar, where Sri Ramakrishna lived from age 19 to where he was nearly, well, he was 50 years old. So those 41 years, you will feel the radiance even before you come to the temple itself. You can feel it from the river if you're crossing to it by boat. You can feel it as you nearby. So the greatest way to bring greater truth into the world is to become that truth yourself.
Thank you.
You bet, Sonny. And believe you me, it is a truth. It is a truth. Just be in the presence of any of these holy ones, any of the swamis of the order, other great holy ones from other traditions. You feel the radiance in their presence. Anything else from anyone?
Hi, Shankaraji.
Yes, Balaji, so good to hear from you.
I think, of course, you keep saying all the time, which is true completely, is japa yajna. Keep on chanting the mantra.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I think that really gives solace to the mind. And actually, one of the Swami says, make sure you concentrate on the words and the silence in between.
Mm-hmm. Yes, this is why Chaitanya, one of the great teachers of that bespoke the coming end of the Kali Yuga. He was in the 14th and 15th centuries, or was it 15th and 16th? Anyway, 15th and 16th, 15th and 16th centuries. What does his prayer say? Chant the name of the Lord and his glory unceasingly, that the mirror of the heart may be wiped clean and quenched that mighty forest fire, worldly lust raging furiously within. What a representation, just at the very start of his prayer, which is a primer full of instructions. But he says, if you do this, if you chant the name of the Lord and his glory regularly, unceasingly, not just today and then again next week, but regularly. The mirror of the heart will be wiped clean, and that mighty forest fire of outward directed food gathering through the senses will stop, and your mind will become quiet. And so this is why the Swamis emphasize chanting the mantra, of course. Thank you, Balaji. Anything else?
Yes,
Yes.
Shankar.
Yes,
Sorry,
please.
was I going to say something? I thought I heard someone else.
No.
Okay. So like, could we like actually achieve enlightenment if we were just to sit down and like chant our mantra for an eternity or however long like we live? That might, I don't know if that sounds like a silly question, but
If you could do that, but can you achieve enlightenment in this lifetime? The short answer is yes. Sri Ramakrishna says, just follow my instructions, and I am not loath to grant liberation. In other words, that's why he came, to unchain us and set us free, as Vivekananda says. Now, this business about doing it all the time. Sri Ramakrishna says you can't keep your voice, even if you're a skilled singer. You cannot keep your voice always on the highest note. So, of course, you return to the plane of ordinary consciousness. But as you practice, the plane of ordinary consciousness changes for you. It no longer has the attraction that it once had. It no longer seems to promise anything much. You understand, well, this is what it means to be embodied. And so I do my work, I do my duties, I go through my day, and there's joy in it because I'm doing it in a spirit of service, work as worship. But then you try to remember to chant your mantra whenever your mind is not otherwise necessarily occupied. And that slowly and slowly becomes a habit. And you find that the mantra is always, so to speak, running in the background. And so it spontaneously emerges when the mind is not otherwise occupied. But yes, you can achieve illumination, liberation, whatever you choose to call it, salvation in this lifetime. And chanting the mantra is, according to Sri Ramakrishna, that form, along with the other forms of bhakti yoga, are the most powerful way to do it in this time. Thank you, Aaron. That's right on point.
Yes, Brother Shankar.
Yes, Vijay.
Good morning, everyone. Hema, she made a very good point a while ago, and I'd like to add to it by saying that some people that have recommended your Saturday morning class to, they felt that it's difficult for them to understand some of the names and expressions. And to them, my guidance has been that to get started anytime, anywhere, from wherever we are, and over a period of time, it will build upon itself. The names will become easier. The new expressions will become easier in Vedanta. And it's like a house, brick upon brick, it builds upon itself. I'm saying this as there may be some other people who may be seekers and not feel as comfortable because they are new to the topic.
Well, thank you, Vijay. Thank you very much for all of that, for recommending the class and for what you've said. Of course, it helps if the people, because they're regularly invited to, it helps if they will just simply ask when they feel like they don't understand something. This is a class, not a lecture. And so they should feel free to ask the question, who is this that you've mentioned, this name? What is this concept? Sunny, who's relatively new to us, very good at asking these questions. Aaron is very good at asking these questions. Others as well. But it's, of course we're unfamiliar with the vocabulary in the beginning. Of course we're unfamiliar with the structure of the concepts. And as you say, it's built brick by brick. But unless the brick below is solid, the brick above cannot rest solidly on that prior knowledge. So they need to take their courage in both hands and ask, rather than just let things go by. I didn't understand that. Oh, that's a shame. No, 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 please, please. Be bold enough to say, because it's a class. You're not expected to be an expert here.
I'm gonna jump in.
There are no experts here.
I'm gonna jump in and say something.
Yes, please.
About what we're talking about. I know that for people who are brand new and not used to this group or used to these people, because we don't have any system for answering questions, like an orderly, then the people who get to talk and ask questions are the ones who can just jump in there. And I'm a pretty assertive person in general, but if I'm in a Zoom with a bunch of people I don't know, and I know they mostly know each other, I'm just going to hang back, because for one thing, it is hard to jump in on this group. Mm-hmm. It is really hard. And I'm just, we might need to have someone looking out for hand raises. There's a thing in reaction where I don't know if you can see my hand. It's kind of hard to see. But you can see it in the participants. We might need a monitor. I know you can't do it, Brother Shankara, and you shouldn't have to, but maybe have someone who monitors, hand raises and kind of lets people go in order, because that way, when we had the classes in person, when we would have Q&A, we would go around the circle, mm-hmm. and you would either make a comment or say pass. Mm-hmm. And it gave people who weren't as assertive and extroverted a chance to say something. And you can't just say, be bold. And, anyway, those are just my thoughts about that. So if anybody else has
very much, and you're absolutely right. Those of us who are more assertive by nature, more extroverted, as you say, it's easier for us.
Thank you, Cindy. It's very nice of you to say what you said. I believe one way to help those new seekers would be to maybe set aside 2 or 3 minutes or more, especially for them, like a block of time. Are there any questions or any expressions that are new to you that would like to ask more about?
Thank you, Vijay.
That's an idea. And if anybody else has any ideas, because I've thought about this some. Even I, who am I've been coming to Vedanta since the mid-90s, and I still have trouble jumping in sometimes here myself. And so I don't. Anyway, we can all think about it and maybe come up with something. So thank you for bringing that up.
We read questions from the chat.
Yes, that's a
good idea. Yeah,
that's a good way to do it. But we'll need somebody, and it can be me. I'm almost always here.
Sounds like you got the job, Cindy.
And if I'm for some reason not here, then you can do it, Brahmadas.
Okay, I'll be your backup, because I attend a lot of these meetings, so that's fine.
There seem to be 3 things in chat right now. There seem to be 3 messages in chat.
Oh, they're talking about the page number. That's all.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Just wondering what page we're on.
Okay, well,
Because usually when you start reading, this comes up in the chat pretty much every time you start reading, and we don't know the page. So someone tells everybody, and then we all go to the page.
okay, very good. Thank you.
I think we can summarize this part of the conversation by saying that, as Lord Krishna said, in this, there is no loss of effort. And the most encouraging thing is that Lord Krishna says we can start at any point, anywhere, from wherever we are at, and there'll be no loss of effort.
Thank you, Vijay.
Okay, you done?
Anything else? All right. You have to establish the interest in God. Then comes self-surrender. Now, people largely misunderstand self-surrender. So it's important to really listen to what the Swami has to say here. Of course, it is impossible to discriminate and shun the object of pleasure and devote yourself to God immediately. It takes time. Just consider, if you really love God, is there any room left for anything else? That is what religion is. That is what is meant by spiritual life. It is guaranteed that you will experience joy that is beyond all expression, beyond all understanding. We shall all reach that ocean because we live in that ocean of blessedness. What does this, Swami, mean? We will reach that ocean when we understand we're already in it. We shall all reach that ocean because we live in that ocean of blessedness. Ignorance will vanish one day. But do not wait. Try to remove that blindness from your sight and now and try to remove that blindness from your sight here and now and make your life blessed. The followers of the path of devotion ultimately come to the realization and experience that love, the lover, and the beloved are one. One time, a disciple of Holy Mother wrote her, "Mother, I follow the path of devotion, and I'm living in this ashram, which is Advaita, non-duality. Am I not a hypocrite? I follow this path of devotion, and I am living in this ashram, which is Advaita, non-duality, non-dualistic. Am I not a hypocrite?" Mother wrote him back, "Our master was a non-dualist. We are all non-dualists. That is what we have to attain." There is only one difference between the followers of other paths and the followers of the path of knowledge. The followers of the path of knowledge make an attempt to reach the ultimate truth directly. Non-dualists do not say that all experiences, except the experience of Brahman and Atman, are unreal. In fact, they accept the relative reality of every experience. A mirage also has a reality as long as you experience it, but when you come nearer, it vanishes. It has a certain degree of reality. Swami Vivekananda used to say, "You have to see nothing but God all your life." Now that's a tall order, isn't it? So the Swami explains, Swami Vivekananda used to say, you have to see nothing but God all your life. What you are seeing is nothing but Brahman, but your vision is not open. So you see the appearance, the empirical reality. In other words, you are living in that ocean of blessedness, but you don't realize it. There is a beautiful verse in the Upanishads, quote, the senses have been created outgoing, and so we are looking outward. But there are some who control the outgoing senses and look within. They find the Atman in all its glory. That's from the Katha Upanishad. There are some who control the outgoing senses and look within. They find the Atman in all its glory. That is not a very simple thing, but once you attain this knowledge, you never lose it. Once you have the experience, it is yours forever. It is not like relative experiences, which we can forget. You know the prayer of Chaitanya, ah, how I long for the day when an instant's separation from thee, O Govinda, will be as 1,000 years, when my heart burns away with its desire, and the world without thee is a heartless void. I'm going to repeat that. This is right toward the end of Chaitanya's prayer. When the devotee has renounced the world, but has not yet come to that state where they're living with their knowledge of the truth of themselves, of the Atman, continuously. Ah, how I long for the day when an instant separation from thee, O Govinda, will be as 1,000 years, when my heart burns away with its desire, and the world without thee is a heartless void. For those of you who don't know Govinda, Govinda is a name of Krishna, but it's Krishna in the sense that Chaitanya is talking about. Krishna is the supreme divine being. So Govinda is just a sweet name for, an affectionate name for the supreme divine being in the form of Sri Krishna. We have to come to that state in which we cannot do without the thought of God. We have to come to that state in which we cannot do without the thought of God. As I said, what happens is if you repeat your mantra and you keep repeating your mantra, after a time, the mantra is always running in the background. And so when you're not otherwise occupied, that is what comes forward. That's a truth. That's something that is experienced by many and can be experienced by you. We have to come to that state in which we cannot do without the thought of God. It is not done in a day or two. You have to practice until you feel, I don't want anything. I have no more craving for anything. You have to practice until you feel, I don't want anything. I have no more craving for anything. I only want you, Lord. When we come to that state, the door opens. That is the grace of Brahman. You have to have the faith in yourself that if others have attained God, you can also attain God. If you do not have that faith, you will not struggle. You have to have faith in yourself that if others have attained God, you can also attain God. If you do not have that faith, you will not struggle. Even the followers of the path of knowledge have to be dualists, for who is there to meditate upon whom? But that meditation is not, but their meditation is on the identity of the Atman, the sense of divine presence within yourself, and Brahman, the supreme divine presence. The non-dualist's meditation is on the identity of the Atman with Brahman. The ultimate truth is that there is only Brahman and nothing else. That's that ocean of blessedness that we're immersed in, that the Swami spoke of earlier. There's only that ocean of blessedness. There's only Brahman. It's only that we're not aware of it. You and I are one with Brahman. There is no you, no I, no universe. There is just Brahman, and I am that. You've heard it said here before that Ramana Maharshi was once in his ashram, and this group of people who had come, a group of them had organized themselves and come a long way. And one of them was the spokesperson for this group. And so there would have been some Q&A, question and answer between Ramana Maharshi and this spokesperson. And finally the spokesperson said, well, Master, if I attain the state of realization that you say is possible for me, and then he gestures to the rest of the people who'd come with him. He said, what about the others? If I attain that state of realization that you have attained and that you have told me about, what about the others? And Ramana Maharshi very calmly remarked, there are no others. By which he meant there is only the I. And so the ultimate truth is that there is only Brahman and nothing else. You and I are one with Brahman. There is no you, no I, no universe. There is just Brahman, and I am that. The Sufis tell an interesting story. A lover comes and knocks on the door. Who is it? It is I. The door does not open. Again, there is the knock at the door. Who are you? I. The door doesn't open. Then a third knock, and the question, who are you? I am thou. Then the door opens. A knower of Brahman becomes Brahman. It is not like I know an object. As long as there is the least demarcation between the subject, the knower, and the object of knowledge, you have not known the truth. It is only when you have become one that the three knots of knower, known, and knower, knowing, knower, known, and knowing are untied. Because I read that poorly, I'll read it again. It is only when they have become one that the three knots of knower, known, and knowing are untied. When knowledge has become unified knowledge, when it is the supreme knowledge that you are one with Brahman, when knowledge has become unified knowledge, then it is the supreme knowledge that you are one with Brahman. When knowledge has become unified knowledge, then it is the supreme knowledge that you are one with Brahman. Plato said something very interesting. Its object will not be to generate in the person the power of seeing. On the contrary, it assumes that he possesses it, though he's turned in a wrong direction and does not look to the right quarter. Its aim is to remedy this defect. He gives the analogy of a man chained and looking into a wall to the finite. Of course, the remedy is to direct it. Not, the remedy to this defect is not so simple. It is known as the practice of spiritual disciplines. They are very important and necessary. In the Katha Upanishad, we read, by learning, a man cannot know him if he desists not from evil, if he controls not his senses, if he quiets not his mind, and practices not meditation. But let me tell you, purity of heart can be achieved by one simple process, longing for him. Now, this is a refrain that comes from Sri Ramakrishna, through Sri Ramakrishna, Swami Brahmananda, the spiritual son of Sri Ramakrishna and Holy Mother, and from Swami Brahmananda to Swami Prabhavananda. Sri Ramakrishna uses this story. If you are a robber by profession and you come into a room and you know that just on the other side of a very penetrable wall, a wall that you could get through, there is a hoard of treasure. What will be that robber's thoughts and what will be that robber's actions? He will find anything he can, and his thoughts will be constantly preoccupied with how can I get through this wall? He'll dig at it with his fingernails. He'll find a nail file. The longing for that treasure will preoccupy his thoughts entirely. This is what Sri Ramakrishna says is meant by the longing that the Swami speaks of here. Let me tell you, purity of heart, which is the necessary quality to discern that you are living in the ocean of blessedness. But let me tell you, purity of heart can be achieved by one simple process, longing for him. It is said that as long as any craving or desire remains, that vision does not open up. Sri Ramakrishna used to give the illustration of a thread and needle. If the thread is not one-pointed, if there is even one fiber sticking out, it won't go through the eye of the needle. But to have that deep longing is to be free from all desires. One time a disciple asked our Holy Mother, "Mother, what should I pray for?" A disciple asked Holy Mother, "Mother, what shall I pray for?" She answered, "Pray for desirelessness." This is the point. When you are desireless, you have the fulfillment of all desires. The Swami Prabhavananda was asked, "Oh Swami, if I attain that state of realization, won't I lose everything?" By that, the person meant their personality, their capability of doing and being in the world. And the Swami said, "No, my child, you lose nothing, you gain everything." This is the point. When you are desireless, you have the fulfillment of all desires. So I say to you, have your pleasures for now, but at the same time, try to devote yourself to God. See what happens. You will find greater happiness, greater joy. So I say to you, have your pleasures for now, but at the same time, try to devote yourself to God. See what happens. You will find greater happiness, greater joy. Everything else will become a shadow, a reflection. The desire for the infinite is the very beginning of spiritual life, and it ends in the realization of the infinite. So I say to you, have your pleasures for now, but at the same time, try to devote yourself to God. See what happens. You will find greater happiness, greater joy. Everything else will become a shadow, a reflection. The desire for the infinite is the very beginning of spiritual life, and it ends in the realization of the infinite. And that's the end of the talk. We have a few minutes left.
Brother Shankara.
Yes.
This is Fred. I am a seeker, new to Vedanta.
I recognize you, Fred. Thank you for jumping in.
And I want to thank everybody for their welcoming comments. I do appreciate that. And thank everyone for being here. I have to say, I just have to say this. That story about the robber on the other side of the wall from the treasure just really resonated with me, and it shows you where my head is. I'm new. But there's something about that. It's so human and so lovely.
Yes, and of course we all understand it. But Fred, thank you for being so candid about yourself. But yes, we all resonate to that story. That's why Sri Ramakrishna used it.
Yeah, so that's really all I wanted to share. And it's true that a lot of the terminology is unfamiliar, but as I become more involved, it just kind of falls into place, I guess. I don't know. But
Well,
anyway,
just don't ever hesitate, Fred. If some terminology, if some language is used that you know that if this isn't resolved, that it'll be a softness. So whether you can't build on a softness, just don't. This is a class. It's meant to be a conversation among us all. As you've heard, others, this is not a top-down situation. We're all participants here. We're all studying the art of spirituality.
okay, very good. Thank you.
Thank you, Fred.
Brother Shankara?
Yes, Vijay.
I have a question that is not on today's class. It's about gunas. When they say any of the three gunas cannot exist by itself, all three have to be there. Could you throw some more light on that expression, please?
Well, first of all, I suggest that you take Swami Prabhavananda's copy of the translation and commentary on Bhagavad Gita and read that appendix in the back titled Cosmology of the Gita. The way in which, according to Sankhya philosophy, which is the cosmology behind the Gita, according to that frame of reference, that cosmology, the gunas are the tool of ahamkara in order to make that which experiences, first in a subtle form and then in the gross form, which is what's sitting here and on the other side of the screen. Both the gross and the subtle form of manifestation. So Sankhya means counting or enumeration. And if you look into it in depth, you'll find it is very, it has a lot in common with the what the chemists call and the physicists call the periodic table. So much of this and so much of that compounded equals this. The three ingredients of manifestation, both subtle and gross, are the gunas. Tamas, the power of concealment, which expresses itself in the physical world as inertia, in the psychological world as stubbornness and laziness. Rajas, the projecting power. Rajas is in the physical world as lava from a volcano. In the psychological world as aggression, strong, passionate activity, and the anger, lust, projecting power. The only way to overcome the inertia of tamas, the concealing power, is to project something. This is why it's said, you know, if you're feeling tamasic, if you're feeling in this inertia state, who cares, whatever, get up, do something, be up and doing. Then the third of the gunas is sattva, the revealing power. The metaphor for sattva is sunlight or rain. It causes there is the projection of rajas cannot come to fulfillment without being revealed. And so there's the revelation and the power of revelation of sunlight and rain and so on in the physical world. In the psychological world, it manifests as contentment, as a sense that, yes, I understand the meaning of what the guru says and what the scriptures say. I understand it intellectually. So they are the tools of The gunas are the tools of the divine presence to create all that we experience without exception. Everything we experience is so much of tamas, so much of rajas, and so much of sattva.
Thank you very much. Excellent.
I'm glad. Anything else?
Brother Shankara?
Yes, Nira.
Yes, when you're talking about sattva, I was reminded of where does discrimination fall? Will that be under sattva, that we discrimination what is right and wrong and judgment to choose the right path? Will that be revealing?
No, dear. This business of judgment, we have to be very careful about judgment. Judgment is by and large a way of keeping reality at arm's length so that we don't have to embrace it, we don't have to deal with it. If I can box it up, if I can intellectually contain it within my judgment, then I don't have to really deal with it. The divine contains, and this is what is so hard for us to grasp, the divine in manifestation contains both light and darkness. And the revealing power of sattva will allow us to understand that, not judge it, not decide right and wrong. As Sri Ramakrishna says, do the spiritual practices, then there's no question of right and wrong. You don't have to decide what's right and wrong. You will simply do the appropriate thing in the moment. Now, of course, that is a process. It doesn't happen immediately. But the gunas are not, discrimination is a different thing. And discrimination and judgment are entirely different. Discrimination is saying, this fits the description of the finite, and this fits the description of the infinite.
Okay. Thank you so much for clarifying that, because I was mixing up the two. And I really meant discrimination. You know, when we say practice, abhyasa and viveka, I was applying on that. Yeah.
Very good. Very good. Thank you, Nira.
Shankara, just a few more seconds, if you could say on your sentence, discrimination and judgment are entirely different. Could you say just a little more on that, please?
As I said, judgment is an intellectual conviction that I understand this. I have it boxed up within my concepts. And so I don't have to deal with it anymore. I don't have to embrace it. We particularly do this with things that we don't like, that we're averse to. We particularly do it with people that we don't like and that we're averse to. And so then we say, I know who that is. I know how that person is. And I don't like them, and I don't like that. And so I'm not going to be bothered with them. Well, of course, one has to be careful with whom they spend their time and how they spend their time. But that comes with discrimination about how I should spend my time, not about anything having to do with that other person. When I spend my time with that other person, I don't feel that my time is spent well. It's not about the other person, it's about me. Now, one can, and it is most auspicious to, regard that other person as the divine, also immersed in ignorance. And it's so important for us to keep in mind that the moment we're no longer immersed in ignorance, we'll be illumined. So we too are immersed in ignorance. So it's just a matter of their ignorance being uncongenial to me, unproductive for me. So that's discrimination rather than judging that person or that situation. If you judge it, it means you don't have to deal with it anymore.
Thank you very much, please.
You're welcome, I'm glad. Anything else?
Yes, Brother Shankara, when we gave the example of the robber who thinks of the treasure on the other side of the wall, I was also reminded of another example, how you feel longing is that Thakur gives the example of a person who's underwater and his head is held under the water, and how he feels, he gasps for a breath of air, and that's how he feels. That's how you should feel for the God, for the yearning for the God.
Yes, that example is used when someone asks their guru, what does it mean to yearn for God? And so the guru takes them to a pond of water, pushes their head under the water and holds it there. And then after an appropriate length of time, lifts their head out of the water and says, how did you feel? And the person says, I was dying for a breath of air. I was, and so the guru says, when you have that feeling for the divine, for the infinite, rather than being imprisoned in the finite, then it will come to you. But, Swami Prabhavananda says it's easier than that. Just focus, as he said, you're in the West, you see the shining light in the East, start moving toward the shining light in the East. You will spontaneously move away from the things that have imprisoned you in the West. Let that longing to be with the light that you see in the East pull you and pull you and pull you. And don't be upset with yourself because you take a detour. Don't be upset with yourself because you sit down in frustration and tamasic, getting a case of who gives a damn anyway. It happens. So we just get up. As Swami Vivekananda said, I fall 1,000 times, I rise 1,001 times. Anything else, dears? All right. To those who are new to us, so glad you joined us. May this be auspicious for you, and may you feel motivated to be part of the studying the art of spirituality together. Any final thoughts from anyone? All right. Oh, dearly beloved, a flower at your feet for each one who comes to your open door. A flower at your feet for each one who stands by your open door and says, "Come to me, come to me," offering to break this world's chain that binds us down to ignorance, suffering, and death. A flower at your feet for each one who takes the path that you have struck through this your jungle world. Om, Amen. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto us and to all beings everywhere. And as we would normally part from one another in the parking lot, but cannot, we'll do it this way. Jai Shri Guru Maharaj. Jai Shri Guru Maharaj Ki Jai. Durga, Durga, Durga. May you be safe. May you be healthy. May you be cheerful, and may you have peace of mind. May you go forward in the mother's loving and protective embrace. And for those of you who don't know what Jai Shri Guru Maharaj Ki Jai, Durga, Durga, Durga means, Jai Shri Guru Maharaj Ki Jai is a salutation to the divine presence in all its forms. Then an invocation of a specific form of the divine feminine in the form of Durga, who is responsible for journeys, responsible for carrying us forward across the ocean of life. Durga, it's a form of the Divine Mother. So we invoke her by chanting her name 3 times, Durga, Durga, Durga. And then the clapping. Well, Swami Prabhavananda was asked, "Why the clapping, Swami?" He said, "To get her attention, of course." And so that's what that's about. Jai Shri Guru Maharaj Ki Jai. Durga, Durga, Durga. Until next time, tomorrow morning at 11, we will live stream the birthday celebration and worship service, puja, for Swami Vivekananda. His lunar birthday was on Friday, but since most people can't join us on a Friday, we celebrate it on a Sunday. And of course, his Gregorian calendar birthday is January 12th. January 12th. And 9 days later, Swami Brahmananda, the man who was to become Swami Brahmananda, was born on the 21st. And so the following Sunday, the 14th, we will celebrate his birthday. Just what his lunar birthday is, I don't recall. But in any case, tomorrow, Swami Vivekananda's birthday, and the worship service that goes with that, and the following Sunday, the 14th. And then will be Swami Brahmananda's birthday celebration. And the final 2 talks of this month, which will be on the 21st and the 28th, will be on chapters 3, 4, and 5 of the Gita. Because February is a month for the study of Karma Yoga. And it's in those 3 chapters that Sri Krishna very explicitly describes not only Karma Yoga, but the outcomes of Karma Yoga. So that's what the rest of February is like. And hope to see you tomorrow. We'll be live streaming from the chapel. I'll give a little talk about Vivekananda, and then Aditya Chaturvedi very kindly is going to do our puja, our worship service. Any final thoughts or questions from anyone? All right, dears. Until next time.
Thank you, Brother Shankar.
Hey,
Bye-bye,
thank you.
dear. Bye-bye, dear.
Bye-bye.